Hello, my name is Camila, and I've been fascinated by chemistry from a young age. As a child, I loved to mix various ingredients in the kitchen, concocting my experiments much to my mother's dismay, but it was something that captured my heart. After completing high school, I pursued a degree in chemical engineering at the university. Following graduation, I secured a position at a pharmaceutical company where I had the opportunity to work on the development of new medications. I found great satisfaction in my career, feeling that I was contributing to the creation of life-saving treatments. 3 years ago, I met Luca at a gathering hosted by a friend we both knew. He was a tall man with sandy blonde hair and a radiant smile that immediately drew me in. We introduced ourselves and spent the entire evening talking, which swiftly led to us dating. Luca was not only charming, but he also always knew just the right thing to say, making me feel truly valued. After 3 years together, we decided to get married in an intimate ceremony attended only by close friends and family. Following our wedding, I moved into the large, old house where Luca lived with his mother, Gianna. Gianna was bedridden, and Luca had been caring for her. Being new to the family dynamics, I suggested gently that perhaps we could consider a care facility that could provide the necessary medical attention Gianna needed. Luca seemed uneasy with the idea, expressing that his mother had always preferred to stay at home. The following day, Luca's sister Zoe visited. Zoe had always been a tense presence. She had recently become a widow and had inherited a substantial sum from her much older husband. Zoe and I had never really connected, and she was quite vocal about her disagreements. As soon as she arrived, she confronted us about the idea of moving their mother to a home. I tried to explain calmly that it was just one option, but Zoe insisted vehemently that her mother would stay in her home until the end. I chose not to pursue the matter further, especially considering Zoe's recent loss and her clear opposition. Living with Zoe was challenging. She had a way of arriving unexpectedly and complicating matters. She never really took to me and didn't hesitate to show it. One evening, while I was preparing a simple chicken dish for dinner, Zoe entered the kitchen and immediately criticized the meal for being too bland, which was her usual way of expressing dissatisfaction. I responded as calmly as possible, trying to maintain peace. Luca entered the kitchen amidst this tension and asked what was happening. Zoe quickly voiced her displeasure, claiming that the food was not to her mother's taste. Luca, caught in the middle, looked at me with a mix of frustration and appeal, hoping I could somehow smooth things over with his sister. Luca, I've been trying really hard, but Zoe's constant criticism is weighing heavily on me. No matter what I do, it never seems to satisfy her, I confessed, feeling overwhelmed by the situation. Over the next few days, the atmosphere at home became increasingly strained. Zoe's unannounced visits became frequent, and with each visit, she found something new to criticize, making me feel like I was constantly tiptoeing around her, unsure of what might provoke her next. One evening, she barged in and immediately started to berate the state of the house. "Camila, this place is a disaster. Don't you ever clean?" she accused, scanning the room with obvious disgust. "I clean every day, Zoe." "Maybe if you pitched in, it wouldn't be so difficult to manage," I retorted, my patience finally snapping. "How dare you speak to me that way?" "I'm just trying to help," she yelled back. "Help? By criticizing everything I do?" "That's not helping, Zoe," I countered, and my frustration reached a peak. Luca intervened. "Camila, please calm down." But I couldn't hold back my frustration. Calm down? She's constantly attacking me, and I'm supposed to just take it? I argued, the tension escalating. Zoe glared at me and stormed out, leaving a thick air of tension behind. Dealing with Zoe became so challenging that I started avoiding being home when she visited.
It was simply easier that way.
Unfortunately, 8 months later, Gianna's health deteriorated significantly, and she passed away. This was a difficult period for everyone, particularly for Luca. The funeral was a solemn event, but Zoe's behavior only added to the stress. At the graveside, she confronted me angrily. "Camila, if you had found the right treatment, Mom might still be here." I was shocked. "Zoe, I'm not a doctor. I did everything I could." I defended myself. Those are just excuses, she snapped, her words cutting deep without regard for who might hear. After the funeral, I told Luca he needed to address Zoe's behavior. Luca, you've got to talk to her. She can't keep blaming me for everything, I pleaded, trying to keep my voice steady. But Luca's response was disheartening. Camila, you're just making things worse. Stop provoking her, he accused, which felt like a punch to the gut. His words were both insulting and hurtful, especially after all I had done to care for his mother. In the months following Gianna's passing, I struggled with the accusations Zoe had thrown at me during the funeral. I needed something to distract myself, so I decided to clear out Gianna's old room, hoping it might help me find some peace of mind. While sorting through her belongings, I discovered a stack of medical documents in her desk drawer. Curiously, I began to sift through them. One report from 4 years prior indicated that Gianna was in excellent health, which puzzled me given her recent death from internal bleeding. When Luca got home from work and saw what I was doing, he asked, "Hey, what are you up to?" I showed him the documents. Look at this. For years ago, she was fine, but then she died of internal bleedings. Luca looked concerned as he took the papers from me. Yeah, that is strange. What are you thinking? He asked. I'm not sure yet, but it doesn't add up, I said, feeling uneasy. A thought then struck me. Didn't Zoe's husband also die of internal bleeding? Luca nodded slowly. Yes, he did. And both of them had unexplained bruises. This revelation made us both pause, a chilling realization beginning to dawn on us. Feeling increasingly anxious, I discussed my worries with Luca. They both had unexplained bruises, which could be from blood thinners, but neither of them was taking any medication like that, right? I asked, trying to piece things together. No, they weren't, Luca replied, his brow furrowed with concern. What are you suggesting, Camila? I'm not sure, but it's strange. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, I admitted, trying to soothe my racing thoughts. However, just a few days later, I noticed unexplained bruises on my arms and legs. Confused and concerned, as I hadn't bumped into anything recently, I decided to take a blood test in my lab. The results were shocking. My blood contained high levels of warfarin, a potent anticoagulant. I knew for certain I hadn't taken anything like that. Luca, we need to talk, I said, finding him in the living room. He looked up, visibly weary. What's it now, Camila? Someone's been poisoning me, I told him, showing him the lab results. His face turned pale.
Who would do that?
It doesn't make any sense, he said, shaking his head. I think it's connected to what happened to your mom and Zoe's husband, I explained, the gravity of the situation sending shivers down my spine. Camila, you're starting to sound paranoid, Luca replied, frowning. I'm not paranoid. This is real. We need to figure out who's behind this, I insisted, my voice tinged with desperation. Just then, Zoe walked in, unannounced as usual. What's going on here? She inquired, looking between us. Camila thinks someone's been poisoning her, Luca explained, holding up the lab results. Poisoning? That's ridiculous. She works in a lab. Maybe she accidentally contaminated herself, Zoe said sarcastically. I didn't take anything by accident, Zoe. This is serious, I countered, frustration building. Oh, please, you're always so dramatic. Maybe you should focus on your issues instead of creating problems for everyone else, Zoe retorted, rolling her eyes dismissively. This isn't about drama, Zoe. This is about my life, I snapped back, my anger nearing its peak. Camila, calm down, Luca interjected, trying to mediate. Calm down? Your sister's accusing me of making this up, and you're telling me to calm down? I yelled, overwhelmed by frustration and disbelief. Camila, you're acting irrationally. We can't keep doing this. I think we need a divorce, Luca declared coldly. His decision seemed final. Divorce? Are you serious? You're choosing to believe her over me? I asked, stunned and hurt. Yes, Camila. You're always causing trouble. I can't handle it anymore, he said, turning away. Zoe stood by, a smirk of satisfaction on her face. I felt utterly numb as I packed my belongings, the reality of the situation crashing down around me. Zoe's triumphant smile followed me as I left the house, my heart heavy with a sense of profound betrayal. After moving out, I rented a small apartment near my workplace. Despite the emotional turmoil, I was determined to uncover the truth. I reviewed all the evidence, and it became clear that Zoe was responsible. She had poisoned her husband and her mother and had attempted the same with me. I hired a private detective named Matthew to help investigate further. Matthew, I need you to find out everything about Zoe. I'm convinced she's behind this, I instructed him, handing over the documents and my blood test results. Got it, Camila. I'll start right away. Give me 3 weeks, Matthew assured me, nodding decisively. 3 weeks later, Matthew called me. Camila, we need to meet. I've got some information, he said with a serious tone. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe, where he greeted me with a grave expression, signaling the weight of the findings he was about to share. As I sat across from the private detective, Matthew, my stomach churned with anxiety. He laid a thick folder on the table. All right, what did you find? Asked, my voice tense. Matthew opened the folder, revealing documents that painted a grim picture. Zoe's in deep financial trouble. She's blown through all the inheritance from her husband, and now she's drowning in debt, he explained. I scanned the documents, feeling a wave of anger wash over me. So, she resorted to murder for money? First her husband, then her mother, and she even tried to take me out, I said, piecing together the disturbing pattern.
It seems that way.
She's desperate and dangerous, Matthew replied, his tone grave. Determined to confront the situation, I called Luca to arrange a meeting. Luca, it's Camila. Can we talk? I asked firmly when he answered. What's this about, Camila? He sounded wary. It's important. It's about Zoe, I replied, keeping my voice steady. All right, come over, he agreed, a surprising warmth in his voice. I drove to Luca's house, my heart pounding with anticipation and dread. Upon arrival, Luca greeted me with an unexpected warm smile. Camila, glad you came. You know, today's our anniversary, he remarked, holding a bottle of wine. Luca, we need to talk. It's serious, I insisted, trying to remain composed. Let's hold off on that for a bit. Come on, let's have a drink. It's our anniversary, he persuaded, pouring 2 glasses of wine. Reluctantly, I agreed. All right, just for a bit. Then we need to talk. We clinked glasses and I took a sip, trying to set aside my anxiety. But within minutes, I began to feel dizzy and nauseous. Luca, I feel really sick. Where did you get this wine? I asked, clutching the table for support. Zoe brought it from Italy. She said it's special. I've been drinking it for a while, he replied, his concern growing. Luca, this wine is poisoned. Zoe's trying to kill you for the inheritance. Call 911 now, I managed to say before collapsing to the floor, my vision blurring. As I lay there, barely conscious, I heard the door open and Zoe's voice. What's going on here? She demanded. Camila says the wine's poisoned. She's sick, Luca explained, his voice panicked. Poisoned? She's drunk and making up lies to turn you against me, Zoe retorted, her voice dripping with venom. I'll get a cold compress, Luca said, rushing to the kitchen. Zoe knelt beside me, a cruel smile twisting her face. It's over for you, Camila. In a few hours, you'll die of hemorrhage. Then it'll be Luca's turn, and everything will be mine, she hissed. I tried to respond, but my body wouldn't cooperate. The room spun, and darkness crept in. The last thing I heard was Luca returning, his voice filled with worry and confusion. I awoke days later in a hospital, my body aching and my mind foggy. The room was quiet except for the soft beeping of machines. As I blinked, trying to clear my vision, a nurse bustled around. Hey, you're awake. She greeted me with a bright smile. How are you feeling? Like I've been run over, I muttered, my throat dry and scratchy. You've been out for a few days. Your husband called the rescue service just in time, even though his sister tried her best to stop him, the nurse informed me, shaking her head. Luca called, even with Zoe trying to stop him? I asked, a mix of relief and surprise washing over me. Yeah, he did. Good thing, too. The doctor said another hour, and it might have been too late, she replied. Just then, the door opened, bringing with it a new wave of concern and questions about what would happen next. As I lay in the hospital bed, a gentle knock at the door preceded the entry of Matthew, the private detective, accompanied by a police officer he introduced as Officer Martinez. "Camila, glad to see you're awake," Matthew said, pulling up a chair next to my bed, his face showing relief but also concern. "Matthew, Officer Martinez, what's going on? What happened with Zoe?" I asked, my voice weak but eager for answers. "You did it, Camila. You helped us neutralize a dangerous criminal," Matthew responded, his tone serious yet compassionate. Officer Martinez chimed in, "We've opened a criminal case against Zoe. We exhumed the bodies of her ex-husband and her mother, and the examinations confirmed they were both poisoned with warfarin, the same substance found in your blood." I felt a rush of emotions, tears welling up in my eyes. "Just like me," I whispered, the reality of the situation sinking in. "Yes, the same substance. It caused internal bleeding, leading to their deaths," Martinez explained, his voice steady, but filled with a somber note. The weight of his words hit me hard, and I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. I lay there, crying with a mix of relief and sorrow, as they told me the nightmare was finally over. "Camila, you were incredibly brave to come forward with all this information. You've saved lives by exposing Zoe," Matthew said, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. While the nurse continued her checks, Matthew and Officer Martinez discussed the next steps in handling Zoe's case. I listened, feeling a profound sense of closure, yet also a deep sadness. "Camila, if you need anything, don't hesitate to call," Martinez said as they prepared to leave. "Thank you, officer. I appreciate everything you've done," I replied, grateful for their support. After they left, I lay back, staring at the ceiling, overwhelmed with relief, but also battling a hollow feeling about Luca. The uncertainty surrounding him and his inability to see his sister's guilt left me feeling disconnected. I knew healing, both physically and emotionally, would take time, but with Zoe facing justice, I had a chance to rebuild my life, one step at a time. The day of the trial was nerve-wracking. I sat in the courtroom, my heart racing, preparing to face Zoe and publicly share the ordeal she had put me through. Luca was there too, his expression one of doubt and confusion. Despite the overwhelming evidence, he seemed unable to accept his sister's guilt. As we waited for the trial to begin, Luca turned to me, his voice low and tense. "Camila, I can't believe Zoe would do something like this. It feels like you're just out for revenge," he muttered. His words cut deep. I was stunned by his continued denial and blind loyalty to Zoe, even in the face of clear evidence. When the trial started, the prosecutor detailed Zoe's actions and the evidence we had gathered. I was called to the stand, my hands shaking as I took my seat. "Camila, can you tell us about your suspicions and the evidence you found?" the prosecutor asked calmly and steadily. I took a deep breath and began. I started noticing strange symptoms after moving in with Luca. His mother's health declined rapidly, and she had unexplained bruises. I found similar symptoms in myself later on, I explained, my voice trembling. "What did you find in your investigation?" he prompted. I hired a private detective who discovered that Zoe was in severe financial trouble. We found evidence that she had poisoned her husband and was likely trying to do the same to me and Luca for financial gain, I continued, trying to maintain my composure. "Did Zoe ever say anything to you that indicated her guilt?" the prosecutor asked. "Yes, just before I lost consciousness. She told me it was over for me, hinting at her plans not just for me but for Luca as well," I recounted, the memory vivid and chilling. The courtroom was silent, hanging on every word, as the weight of Zoe's betrayal and the scope of her crimes became undeniably clear. As I continued to testify, my voice broke with emotion as I relayed Zoe's chilling words, explaining that after my death, Luca would be next. "She wanted everything we had," I said, tears streaming down my face. The defense lawyer rose to cross-examine me, intent on sowing doubt. "Camila, isn't it true that you and Zoe never got along? Could this be a personal vendetta?" "No, this isn't personal. This is about stopping a killer," I countered firmly, unshaken by the attempt to discredit my testimony. The trial progressed with more witnesses coming forward and the accumulation of evidence against Zoe. The private detective presented his findings, and the medical examiner testified about the presence of warfarin in the exhumed bodies. The courtroom was charged with tension as Zoe was finally called to the stand. Initially, she denied everything, but overwhelmed by the mounting evidence, she broke down and confessed during a subsequent hearing. "Yes, I did it. I poisoned my husband, our mother, and I tried to poison you and Camila," Zoe admitted, glancing at Luca with a scornful smirk. "I wanted it all, the money, the property. And look at you now, crying like a baby." Luca's face crumpled, tears streaming down as he absorbed the reality of his sister's betrayal. Zoe laughed coldly, a chilling sound that echoed through the courtroom. "You were always so gullible, Luca. You never saw what was right in front of you." The judge's gavel banged, demanding order. Zoe was convicted of double premeditated murder and the attempted murder of both Luca and me. She was sentenced to a lengthy prison term, her mocking smile disappearing as she was led away in handcuffs. After the trial, I made the difficult decision to divorce Luca. The pain and betrayal were too deep to mend. I underwent treatment to recover from the poisoning, and through friends, I learned that Luca was also seeking treatment, as Zoe had attempted to poison him as well. In my new, cozy apartment, a fresh start away from all the chaos, I focused on healing and finding peace. One afternoon, I was having coffee with my friend Luna, who had been a steadfast support through everything. "So, how are you doing, Camila?" Luna asked, her eyes full of concern. "I'm getting there one day at a time. It's been rough, but I'm trying to move on," I replied, taking a sip of my coffee. "Have you heard from Luca?" she inquired, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah, he's tried a few times to patch things up," I said, rolling my eyes. "Good for you. After everything he put you through, you deserve better," Luna remarked, nodding in approval. I sighed. I just can't forget how he trusted Zoe over me, time and time again. Trust is everything in a marriage, and once it's gone, there's no going back. "You're right. You need someone who believes in you and stands by you no matter what," Luna affirmed, squeezing my hand in support. Later, as I sorted through old photos, each picture revived a mix of sweet and painful memories. My phone buzzed with a message from Luca. I hesitated but opened it. "Camila, I know I've hurt you deeply. Can we please talk one last time?" the message read. I took a deep breath and replied, "Luca, there's nothing left to say. We both need to move on. I wish you well." As I sent the message, I felt a sense of closure, ready to leave the past behind and look forward to a new chapter in my life. As I pressed send, a wave of mixed feelings washed over me, relief intertwined with a sense of finality. It was time to permanently close this chapter of my life and move forward. In the evenings, I found solace in painting, which became a therapeutic outlet for me. The brushstrokes on the canvas allowed me to express and navigate my emotions constructively. I also joined a local book club, which opened the door to meeting new people and gradually forming a new circle of friends. Each gathering and discussion was a step toward rebuilding my social life and healing from past traumas. With every day that passed, I felt myself moving closer to a life defined by trust, joy, and peace. While the past would always be a part of who I am, it no longer controlled my future. Embracing my experiences, I was ready to face whatever came next, armed with newfound strength and wisdom, eager to see what new joys life would bring.